Welcome back to exercise 3, where we're going to look at creating a digital map from our QGIS. And so this sort of follows on from our first exercise where we introduced what a GIS was, and we essentially navigated around our GIS platform. We added some satellite imagery, and we created some spatial data in the form of our paddock data. So if you've closed all your work down afterwards, you'll obviously have to restart. So find your QGIS desktop icon that I've just highlighted here. We're using 2.18 at the moment, but you might have downloaded a newer version, or you might be working with an older version. Either works okay. Double click on that and you'll open QGIS. I'm working with multiple screens here, so you'll see that I drag things out of your view because I'm only recording on one screen at the moment, just so you know what's actually going on. And obviously in exercise 1 we saved our data, and again you could save it to wherever you want, into whatever folder you want, using whatever naming convention you want. I folded all into a folder on my C drive called ArcTemp, and I called the particular project for exercise 1 GIS tutorial. So if I click on GIS tutorial and open, it will open the previous work that we created. And just as a bit of a refresher, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see our paddock boundaries. I'm actually going to go down here and lock the scale to 1 to 10,000. I think it just works reasonably well with the data that we've got on hand here. I'm going to move the map around because it can get a little bit clunky at times, and I don't want those big white spots in the actual map. So I've got my map now positioned roughly in the area that I want to map. So the first thing we'll go and do is we'll open our new print composer. So print composer is like the map engine for creating our maps that ArcGIS provides. So one of the things I've noticed with composers, if you already had a go and called it a name, it seems to remember that name and doesn't allow you to do it. So I'm just going to call mine map B, but if you're doing it for the first time, you can call your map whatever you like, but as long as you can remember what you've called it. But in this case, AGS107 tutorial CSU farm map B is what I'm actually going to call what we're producing with our QGIS map composer. You'll see now that it's opened a new window for us to work with some new tools that we need to get familiar with. So this is sort of like the print page, and what we're going to do is we're going to build the information we want on this viewer so that we can then export it out or print off our particular map that we're creating. And what we need to have a little bit of a think about is what we actually want to include in that particular map. So there's a number of things we can do. I can create a layout that is the entire page. What map composer will do, it will take the view that you've actually got in QGIS. So if I move QGIS and I change that view, it will actually take that view that I've currently got and put that onto this mapping page. It's not interactive, so if I want a different view, I can't just update QGIS and expect Map Composer to update as well. In this particular version, it isn't that smart. That said, in some other versions of GIS software, they are interactive, and when you make a change in your viewing GIS platform, it'll also update your map viewer. So it just depends on which software you're using. But to kick things off, we're going to go layout and add a map. Now I can obviously, if I was trying to do an inset map with a larger map, I could add in multiple maps, and you can see that it's put that image into that particular area. I could have another larger map if I wanted to. It's drawing the source from the same area, but you can see what I mean. I could link back into ArcGIS, change the view or the scale, and then put that map on into QGIS. So you start to get a feel for what we can and can't do with that. So I'm just going to click on those, and you can see that they're highlighted by all the dots. I'm just going to hit delete, and that will disappear. Same thing there. For this particular exercise, I would like to keep I would like to use the entire page for our layout. So I'm going to click Add Map. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and I'm going to draw a red box that pretty much fills the entire page. And that will drag over our map contents. I might do a little bit of adjustment here just to make sure we've got the entire page covered. And we've now transferred the map from QGIS onto our mapping page that we're going to hopefully be able to print out or export if we wanted to do that. While we've got imagery as a backdrop, we also need to put some basic map elements on here to let the map reader know what the map is trying to show, and also give them basic information about the data itself and some basic location information. So some of those basic map elements that we should include, you can go back through our lecture notes and have a little bit of a look at what we've discussed already, but things like a title that describes what the map's about, a legend that shows the main features on the map. It'd be useful to have a scale bar so people know distances between objects. Important is to include some projection details. So this is details about how the map's been put together in terms of the projection used, the datum used, and that's really important, particularly if you're looking and using different data sets that can have different projections, because you want to know you're working with the same units in the same measurement structure. So also including a north arrow would be useful, maybe some sort of border around the actual map, and then production details, who created this map, when they actually created, and are there any copyright restrictions or anything you want to add to the map itself. If we look at the interface for Map Composer, you can see that on the left here we've got another set of tools that we've got to become a little bit familiar with. The hand is a pan composer, so that can actually move some of the objects around. You've got a move item content button here. If we wanted to add a new map, we could have clicked on that button. If we wanted to add an image, we could click on that button. If we want to add a text box, we can click on this button. Likewise for a legend and a scale bar, if we want to put a north arrow, we can click on this button. So all our basic map elements, we can use this particular toolbar to add to our new map that we're creating. The first thing I want to put on this map is a legend. So I'm going to click on the text box here, and I'm going to draw a little text box up towards the top of the page, and I'm going to enter in some text. So if I go over to the right hand side, you can see that QGIS is the text that's in there at the moment, and what I'm going to call this is the CSU farm map. Given that we're mapping paddocks on the CSU farm, we'll click on there. Now if I scroll down, you can see that I've got a range of options, and I might just make this window a little bit bigger just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what we're doing. So CSU farm map, I'm going to click on font, and I'm going to change my font to something along like Arial, and I might make it bold. I don't think the instructions say bold, but I like bold, so I might make that bold. I might make the font, I think the instructions say 16, but I'm going to try 16. Might actually make it 18. It looks a little bit better on this particular page. And I'll click OK, and you can see that that is now updated. It's sort of to the left hand side of that box, so I don't really like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center it, and I'm also going to put it in the middle of the text box. You can also see, not so much on this map, but certainly sometimes the colours will blend in your map, and you want your title to be really effective and easily seen. So one of the things we can do is we can actually put a frame around our box. So if we click on where it says frame, we can put a frame, we can choose the colour of the frame that we want, and we can choose the thickness. I'm going to increase the thickness. I don't know if the instructions say that or not, but either way I've increased the thickness. And likewise I might put a background in there. I can change the colour, but I'm quite happy with white for the purposes of this demonstration. You can have a look at some of the other menu items as well, and you can of course adjust where that box sits. I'm going to leave it there. You can adjust the size of the box, but I'm going to reduce the size, and I'm going to just try and center that a little bit better. And you can see now we've added a title to our map. The next one we might add is a legend. So if I come down here to this toolbar, we can see that we've got a symbol here that says legend. So I'll click on that, and I'm going to put a legend down here in the left hand corner, and you can see it has the word legend, and it's also got paddock boundaries in our Bing aerial imagery. I've adapted these already, but you can see if you don't if you haven't changed those words, or if you want to call them something else, you just double click in there and you can actually edit the actual words that are in your legend there, and the symbology as well you can edit as well, although it's drawn directly from your QGIS, that symbology, so you'd have to edit it in QGIS before you added the legend. But again, I mightn't want to call it Bing aerial imagery, I might just call it aerial imagery, so I'll delete the Bing and click OK. We can also adjust how that legend looks, so we can, and I'll show you how to do that now. So just like we did with the title, we can also change our alignment for the titles within legend. We can actually go down and we can put backgrounds. If I expand backgrounds, we can change colors for backgrounds. We can actually put a frame around our legend box as well if we want to. Some of the instructions don't say you have to do all of these things, but again, you should be getting familiar with, there's a bunch of tools here you can adjust it to make it look how you would like to see it on your particular map. So once you're happy with your legend, then we can go on to the next step, which is adding a scale bar. So we can click on the left here on the scale bar tool, and we can draw where we might want that particular scale bar. So if we have a look at our scale bar, we can adjust the segments. So at the moment there's 2 segments to the left of 0 and 4 to the right. We might reduce that down to 3. We can also change some of the other parameters on our scale bar. For instance, we might want to change the distance between those particular units from 250 down to 100, which might be a bit more meaningful. And again, I can grab the corners of my scale bar to expand the box that the scale bar is in. I can adjust the size of the box, and I can do the same things. I can change the font, so I can put a frame and a background around it. I'm quite happy not to have a frame and a background around this one. I might just move it down a little bit so it's not quite in the, and I'll make that box a little bit bigger so it's not quite overlapping the bottom paddock and it's above the text from Bing imagery. Now that text has automatically come across. It's one of the issues with using some of the free server data, is that that they put their own copyright stamp on the data, and actually there's other issues that we'll encounter later when we go to try and export this map. But obviously if you can get your own satellite imagery, then you've got a little bit more control about what you can and can't do. Another map element that we might like to add is our projection details. Now to add your projection details, we're just going to do that via adding a text box. But before we add that text box, we actually need to go and find our projection information. So if we go back to our QGIS and we go to project properties, you can see in the CRS tab, you can see that we're dealing with WGS84 pseudo Mercator projection, and we can write that information into a text box back in our map composer window. So we can just close that down now that we know what it is, and we can go back to our composer window. We'll add another text box by clicking on that, and we'll put that text box there. We'll just go in here and I'll type in WGS84 / pseudo Mercator. I might even like to put in projection projection and then put that underneath. And again, it's up to you what size font you want to use and the style. I'm going to stick with Arial. I don't want this to be particularly large because it's not a key thing that I think that the readers need to see, and I don't need it bold, so I might make it 12 font, and then I might align it to the left and to the top, and then I might move this box, if I can get the right, to underneath my legend. I could again come down and I could put a background in there and a frame around it just for consistency. And now we're starting to get, and I might make our legend at the same width, so we're starting to get boxes that look a little bit symmetrical. So we've got our legend on here. We've got a scale bar. Again, you could put the scale bar. Where you put these items is really up to you. But you can start to see now how we fiddle with those tools to actually get things that are aesthetically pleasing. So a few of the other things that we should probably add are a north arrow. So again, if I click on the arrow here and I drag a north arrow, so what I might do is drag a north arrow straight like that. Just put a bit of an arrow on there, and again I can adjust that arrow how I like. I could put a little north. Typically the arrow signifies where north is. I could typically put another little text box there with an M there if I wanted to. You can be as creative as you want. I can add a border to our entire map by actually clicking on the map, and when I click on the entire map, you can see that it's come up with another menu. And if I click on frame, I might make it a bit of a thicker border. We'll do the 1 millimeter, and you can see that it's now added that particular border to our map. And finally, what we might put on there is we'll add another text box that tells the reader who this map was created by. So I might put in created by Rennie on the 23rd of the 8th, 18, and obviously I could add in copyright details if I wanted to do those sorts of things. I'll keep the font consistent. I'll change that to Arial just so that we're using the same font all the time. This information doesn't, if I click the right arrow we might go in the right direction. This information isn't really that important, so I'll leave it at font 10 and I'll move it down to somewhere that's not very intrusive. So the final stage is actually to try and print our map, and we run into a few problems, principally because of the Google data and the Bing data. Because of where they're extracted from, the print engine doesn't seem to work that well. But just to show you, it does work okay for other imagery, particularly imagery that's on your own drive. But you can export the image, you can try and print the image, and you can obviously do it another way by hitting print screen. So if you hit print screen, you can actually select the area and copy your map that way. Right click, save, copy, and then you can include that in your assignments. I'll hit escape to get out of that. Or if you wanted to export it, you could export as an image. You can choose the format that you want to, and give it a save it out as a name. But you typically get some errors when you do it this way, and so I've exported one here, and I'll drag it across just so you can see. And you can see that not all the data has come across in when we've actually exported out. It's just one of the hiccups that you get with using open source software sometimes, and free data, is that sometimes it doesn't work as seamlessly as you'd like. So options for you guys. Use the print screen option to get the whole one. Try using the print functions, export to PDF, export to picture, just see what you get, just so you're a little bit familiar with it. So, but that's it for this tutorial. Thanks very much.